All right, welcome back, everyone. This is Right Now here on the CBS 8 app. Here in San Diego County, we expect another drop of ballot results to be coming around 6 p.m. Yesterday, there was about 375,000 ballots left outstanding, still left uncounted. Today, about 275,000. Remember, that's San Diego County. As ballot counting continues across the state, the big question remains in the gubernatorial race, which two of the three leading candidates for governor will be advancing to the November runoff. News 8 State Matters political reporter Jenny Ha. This was her story that she filed last night. We're going to speak to her about more of the current standings in just a moment. But first, here's her story from yesterday.
I know that we can do it.
The underdog stayed in the fight.
And we know we finished really strong.
It remains to be seen which two candidates will battle it out in November to be the next governor of California. As early results stand Thursday, Trump-endorsed Republican Steve Hilton remains in the lead, followed by Democrats Javier Becerra and Tom Steyer.
I don't think that it has any meaning whether one finishes above the other in a primary like this. This is a race where Steve Hilton really had one opponent, and that was Chad Bianco, whereas Javier Becerra had 5 opponents, the major Democratic candidates in the race with him.
The million-dollar question, will it be Hilton and Becerra or Becerra and Steyer? Election data expert Paul Mitchell says for Steyer to move up from third place, a lot needs to happen. There's a 6-point gap between Steyer and second place Becerra.
He not only needs to make up that 6-point gap, but he also has to have another 6 points to make up for all the ballots that have already been tabulated.
Mitchell says when the next batch of results drops Friday evening, there will be a clearer picture of the November face-off. That's because more of the later ballots will have been counted, and a lot of those later ballots were cast by hesitant Democrats who were holding on to their ballots until the last minute.
A lot of these voters who traditionally vote early, older Democrats that vote in every election that hadn't turned in their ballots yet, they would say, I don't want to make a mistake in the governor's race.
And that is what will dictate the future for Democrats, Mitchell says. On Election Day, we spoke to both the Becerra and Steyer campaigns on how split Democrats seem to be.
You never know what to expect in a campaign cycle, and don't count anybody out.
Look, I think this race has seemed really complicated. I'm sure everybody was very confused for a long time. There's 60 people on the ballot, for goodness sakes. But I think it's become a very simple race.
Also top of mind this primary, Proposition 50, the temporary redrawing of California's congressional districts to give Democrats a 5-seat advantage. A counter to Texas's mid-decade redistricting to give Republicans a 5-seat advantage. Mitchell was the map drawer and says Prop 50's success is still up in the air.
Voters have to vote, campaigns have to campaign, and the map drawer doesn't have anything beyond their one single vote in their one single congressional district anymore.
What wasn't on his bingo card was Congressman Kevin Kiley, who just switched party affiliation from Republican to Independent, running in the redrawn 6th congressional district. Early results show Kiley and a little-known Republican candidate in the top 2.
Basically, he's a -1 from the redistricting plan passed by Prop 50. Kevin Kiley decided he didn't like my maps, and so he moved to a different district and is running.
Jenny Ha, News 8.
All right.
I love how he says that.
I love how he,
like my maps.
I love how he just sort of like mic dropped there on that. All right, so California governor primary results here. These are the most up to date. Steve Hilton remains at the top, though that lead has seemingly shrunk there to just now 1.2% over Javier Becerra. Regardless, if things stay the same, he and Javier Becerra will move on to the general election. Still hanging around there is Tom Steyer at 20.2% of the vote. Republican Sheriff of Riverside County, Chad Bianco, there in a distant 4th place at 11.1%. Our State Matters political reporter, Jenny Ha, now joins us here. Jenny, the work, it never stops, especially when we are coming off this primary election, because guess what? If we get these finalized, you're going to be moving on to that general election coverage. So I have to ask, we sort of believed going back to last Friday that this is how things were going to look by Tuesday. The big question was like, would enough have been done there to get Steyer into that Democrat versus Democrat? Or would it be him versus Becerra? Based on everything that you're hearing, is there, even with all of these outstanding Democrat ballots, is there really a good chance that he could flip into that second spot, or are we looking like this is going to be Becerra Hilton?
I think everything is on the table right now. And just to
Okay.
confirm, you all can hear me, right? Okay,
Yes.
there
Oh
we
yeah.
go.
Oh
Good.
yeah. Yes.
Hello, happy Friday. Good to
Happy
meet you both
Friday.
again.
There we go.
It's been a long week. But yeah, I still think anything is on the table. And like I mentioned in my story, those later votes that are coming in, right, because of voters that have been ballot clutching, as we have, said for many weeks now. Those are really those Democratic voters that were stuck between Steyer and Becerra. And I feel like there were a fair number of people that were stuck between Steyer and Becerra, really debating, okay, who is going to be the more viable Democrat to advance into the November general election? And that more viable Democrat for each voter is, who got that vote at the end of the day. And so will it necessarily lean towards Becerra? Will it necessarily lean towards Steyer? That remains to be seen. And I think that's why at this point, what I'm hearing is it's still, until you count that last vote in an election, anything is still on the table. Anything is fair game.
Yeah, and it's a waiting game to see when we're going to get some more of those answers. We know that Gavin Newsom was really adamant in the run-up to this election, this primary, to like county clerks, trying to ensure that these ballots are being counted as quickly as possible. This, the election, obviously, election day was Tuesday. It is now Friday. Only about 60% of the votes have been touted at this point. Are we hearing anything more from the governor on this, or has he stayed relatively quiet since election day?
I mean, to point out, provide context for our viewers, California is typically a slower, vote counting state, and that's due to a lot of different factors, such as vote by mail, right? Ever since the pandemic, it is state law for every registered voter to be mailed a vote by mail ballot, whether they choose to utilize it or not. And with vote by mail ballots, as long as it's postmarked by election day and received by county elections up to 7 days after an election, that's a lengthy period. It's a week, right, in which additional ballots can be received and counted. So with things like that, for example, it's just per state law, kind of how California elections work. The ballot counting process thus tends to be longer. Slower does not mean suspicious. Slower does not mean fraudulent, right? Our state leaders have emphasized that time and time again. Governor Newsom, what he has recently weighed in on is President Trump's comments actually on Truth Social. I believe it was Wednesday night. But basically, again, saying Democrats are trying to steal the primaries away from Hilton, right? And that, again, kind of raising suspicion at the federal level over the delays in California's vote by mail counting. So this isn't new rhetoric we're hearing from the president. He has cast doubt on California's elections before. And so what we're hearing from the governor and what we're hearing from other state leaders is pushing back on that, saying, hey, that's not the correct narrative. Again, slow does not mean inaccurate or fraudulent.
Yeah, again, and I think that is so key, Jenny, because the president has oftentimes operated in this belief that elections are held the day of, that the votes that are cast the day of, or the votes that count in all of the elections that he's participated in, despite the fact that he is someone who oftentimes does vote by mail. And yes, the headline in the LA Times as of yesterday, Trump without proof claims cheating in California vote, says federal inquiry underway. We know Steve Hilton has joined the echoes, despite the fact that the proof, again, has been shown that because of the COVID change with, as you said, the mail-in ballots, that votes are just take longer to, and look, by the way, look at a map. Look how big California is, and you throw in how many people we have. These statewide elections are very slow to go.
Yes, they are.
All right, I do want to shift, though, to just talking a little bit more about this race. We had our own conversation about this on Tuesday and on Wednesday, but I want to get more of your thoughts. Tom Steyer, Democratic hopeful, as of now is sitting there in third place, spent a record amount, the most. This governor's race is the most expensive, I believe, in U.S. history, right, Jack?
Is the most yes, there's the most expensive governor's race, and we're not even done with the primary.
Right.
We don't know who's winning the primary.
We're not even done with the primary yet. 200 million of the, I believe it's like the 350 million that has been spent, has been Tom Steyer alone. Why has he not broken through? Is it just as simple as money does not equal support? But that is sure a lot of money, Jenny.
And that's actually the same question I asked Paul Mitchell, who actually redrew the Prop 50 maps and is an election data expert we turn to a lot for a lot of stories. I asked him the same question, and he said, it kind of remains to be seen what the key takeaways from this election can be when it comes to the Steyer campaign, right? Whether he advances into November or not. He said this campaign will be studied kind of well into history just because of how fascinating it is. And the big question that I've had, and a lot of political analysts have also had, is, okay, despite Steyer spending that record-breaking amount in his campaign, Has he reached a ceiling? Or is California perhaps just not as embracing of some of the progressive ideas Steyer is pushing? Or are we just unwelcome to the idea of a billionaire, right? Saying tax more billionaires, tax people like me, and trying to, as some have, alleged, buy his way into office. So there are still a lot of questions. I think at the end of the day, though, voters, again, were really just stuck between Democratic voters specifically. They were faced with that fearful narrative on their end of potentially a Democratic lockout from November. And from there, as you all know, where the focus shifted to is making sure at least one Democrat makes it to November. And so a lot of voters were just really focused on somehow breaking down, is it going to be Steyer? Is it going to be Becerra? And with Becerra, kind of luck worked out in his favor with Swalwell dropping out and all of that support going his way. So I think there were just a lot of different scenarios that unfolded really quickly. Again, with Steyer, I think it's a little too early to say right now what exactly is the reason for his success into November, or maybe unsuccessful primary run. Who knows? We don't know the answer yet, but those are all the kind of different factors that I'm hearing.
Yeah, I love that you spoke with Paul there, and I want to ask another question, because you mentioned how the dynamics have been in a way shifted, or at least the expectations in this Kevin Kiley race. One of the ones that we're tracking down here is the 48th district. We had seen Jim Desmond take over nearly, I think, a bit over 40% of the votes here in this primary. We already know who his opponent that would be, in Von Wilpert. But I want to ask, because that is a substantial amount of votes for a Republican to get in a district that has been drawn intentionally for a Democratic advantage. If you add up the bottom two, the next two candidates, both Democrats, it doesn't equal the 40 that he had already get. So there's a lot of support there. If you're Gavin Newsom, or if you're one of the drawers of this of these maps, what are the things that they didn't expect?
I think the main thing, and one thing that Paul also noted, was CD6, the 6th district, which was redrawn. Which is the one Kevin Kiley is running in, right? It was redrawn again to be part of that 5-seat advantage for Democrats. What wasn't on anyone's bingo card, to be very frank, was former Republican Congressman Kevin Kiley registering as an independent, right? But also him running in that district and not in his redrawn 3rd district, which he currently represents. And so I think even the map drawers and state leaders expected a lot of the dynamic shift when they redrew the Prop 50 maps. But what even Newsom warned back in the day was, okay, the maps were redrawn, but it's still up to the voters to vote. It's still up to the campaigns to campaign. You still have an election to run, which is why they were emphasizing that these down ballot races, in addition to the gubernatorial race at the top of the ticket, was so important. And so, again, I think these results will show how engaged voters are by party and how maybe mindful they are of the Prop 50 impacts. But in the CD6 race, again, with Kiley as an independent is in the lead. And you have this not very well-known Republican who is in 2nd place. And so what that indicates to many people for the Republican candidate is, okay, if any Republican voter, if they saw R next to the name, they just immediately voted for that. So partisan voting. So those are just interesting. Yeah.
I was speaking with a former colleague of mine, my best friend, who's out in DC, and we were having a conversation after seeing a lot of these early results here of redrawn districts here in California. He lives in Virginia that just had their own redistricting, vote, and then that taken away. And he actually made this point that I want to bring up. I think for a lot of folks at home, for a lot of the politicians, they just simply think that the districts have been redrawn, therefore the results are just sort of done, right? But as you pointed out, and I think that was so eloquent, it was just simple, elections still have to be won. No matter how things are drawn up, people still will decide how to vote. And obviously, registering as an independent, running in a different district. Of course, there are different ways that you can get around that. But remember, the state of California switched a lot of these from Republican leaning to swing districts, which still gives Republicans a chance. I do want to ask you, though, Prop 50, is it a success if we only see 2? Because there were pretty much estimated to be about 5 Republican districts that would switch over. Is it a success if it's only 2 or maybe 3? Like we know the 48th is going to be heavily watched because that is likely going to be the difference of the Republicans or Democrats having the majority after the midterms.
I think that's a very big math question.
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
Honestly, well, even if we kind of can estimate how it
I
plays
guess
out in California,
let's rephrase the question. Is this a hit to Newsom's legacy if Prop 50 is a failure?
I would think so.
Yeah.
I mean, because I think Newsom also lucked out in timing in that Prop 50 worked out the way it did in California because the courts, I mean, remember Prop 50, the election results was challenged by the California Republican Party and the Department of Justice. So Republicans weren't just sitting back and taking the results. They challenged it and the Supreme Court upheld it. So California is kind of the only really successful state so far that has been able to significantly push back against Texas's redistricting. Like you mentioned, the Virginia redistricting was overturned by the courts. And so I would think so. I mean, Newsom was really able to launch himself even more into that national spotlight and solidify California and himself as the entities that are willing to take that national stand against the Trump administration. And that is proven to be very successful in California. Californians like that our state leaders are doing that. And obviously in a post-Trump era at the national level, that would also be favored by a lot of Americans and Democrats, I would think. So yes, I think Newsom's legacy does, largely rely on the success of Prop 50.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, Jenny. And thank you for all the work that you've been doing and joining us here. It's not going to end, though. The party will continue.
It's actually
as
just
we
getting
jump.
started,
It is
Chris.
Just getting started,
That is
exactly.
right.
But we have fun.
That is true. All right, Jenny, thank you so much.